They're also made possible by grants from Humanities Washington and Arts Washington and the Arthur Vining Davis Foundation. Just kidding. Geez, I'm not going over so good tonight, so I'll just start with Thomas Walton, who will be our MC for the night, and he's just about to publish an anti-lyric essay. You're going to have to explain that. It's called "The World is All That Does Befall Us," and it'll be out this winter from Ravenna Press. He's the author of a micro chapbook. What's that, like 16 poems? Or it's "A Name is Just a Main," and it'll be out in Rinky Dink Press in 2016. Well, I guess it was. And his work has appeared in Zizva. Did I get that right? Yeah, good enough. Del Mar Timberline Review, The Claus Journal, Queen Mob's Tea House, Bombay Gin and other journals, and some of his poems were anthologized in Make It True Poetry from Cascadia. Missed the colon there. And he breeds racing pigs in his spare time. And he's founding editor of Page Boy magazine. And I bet on one of his racing pigs last week, and I'm having him for breakfast tomorrow. So, without further ado, Thomas Walton.
Did you say the Claus Journal? Because they didn't let me know that I got published by them. Oh, sweet. All right, welcome to Cascadia Poetry Festival. Woo! 2017. How many of you were here tomorrow night? All right. For those of you not from Tacoma, welcome to the City of Destiny. That's true, right? Yes. I love it. So I'm going to read, in the spirit of Richard Brautigan, I'm going to read some of his poems from June 30th. Jared last night said he bought a book of Brautigan's at the Tacoma Book Center, and it had a very wonderful dedication. This book I found in a bookstore in Paulsbo, Washington. It also has a very interesting dedication. I love dedications, actually. I was going to say it must be a Brautigan book thing, but it should be a whole form, the book dedication. This one says, "I saw this, and it just said Mark. I don't know if you like poetry or Richard Brautigan or Japan, but it seems weird enough that you might. Sorry about Janet. Love, Jennifer." There must be a book of book dedications somewhere, found book dedications. Is the mic turned on? Do you want me? Should I start over? All right, is this good? Maybe for you guys, but not for me. Just kidding. Okay, so I'm just gonna read 4 short poems from his text. Does everybody know this text? All right, so the first one is fragment number 2, having. I found the word having written sideways all by itself on a piece of notebook paper. I have no idea why I wrote it or what its ultimate destination was, but I wrote the word having very carefully and then stopped writing. This is Taxi Driver. I like this taxi driver racing through the dark streets of Tokyo as if life had no meaning. I feel the same way. This is Taking No Chances. I am a part of it. No, I am the total, but there is also a possibility that I am only a fraction of it. I am that which begins but has no beginning. I am also full of shit right up to my ears. And this is the last one from Brautigan. Unrequited Love. Stop in, write a morose poem, leave. If only life were that easy. Yay, Richard Brautigan! Okay. Our first reader is Tod Marshall, the current poet laureate of the state of Washington. He grew up in Kansas. His books of poetry include Bugle, The Tangled Line, and Dare Say. He has also published a collection of interviews with contemporary poets, Range of the Possible. He lives in Spokane, Washington, and teaches at Gonzaga University. Tod Marshall, everybody.
How's that? Is that okay, Joey? Okay. A little louder. There you go. You can be my litmus test. Is that good? Yeah? Okay. All right. Scars. Some trailers lost their skirting in the last storm, bearing an underworld of cinder blocks and flat tires, old hoses and leaky coils. Busted bikes, millipedes, and spiders gathering beneath the creaking of feet and beds, the occasional crash of a thrown beer bottle, shattered mirrors, or worse. My father nearly killed my mother in the kitchen, Formica countertop broken at the corner where he brought down her head. Sometimes in sunlight the scar shines, skin smooth and tight, sometimes beneath moon and stars, sometimes a single dim bulb on the porch is enough. One humid night she opened the screen door to the neighbor's daughter, who staggered in wearing tattered cut-off jeans and a black bra with one torn strap. My mother iced the girl's eye, and the glow through the window held them safe for a few sobbing minutes. Sometimes I was told to go find something to do, and I actually played with the slow kid down the street. Even at 8, I sensed that he smiled too much, and we chased each other around their single wide, laughing and yelling, until his mother came out and sharply said it was time for lunch, time for the boy up the street to go home. As if she knew that 2 years later, I'd shout retard at her son as I cut through their yard to spend the night at Greg's, 15, who, after his parents were asleep, held me down and whispered that I was going to feel what it was like to be a girl. I don't know the name of the kid who twirled in circles and fell to the ground giggling, who chased grasshoppers caught in the wind, always smiling, but I still know the heat from the flames after his place sparked, a cigarette his sleeping mother dropped between oily cushions. She ran outside and the door locked behind her. I also know that my father sprinted down the street and burnt his hands on each of the doorknobs, hurled a cinder block through the bedroom window, and was held back by arriving firemen who saw that aluminum siding was starting to melt. I know the woman's screams were loud as the shriek of tornado sirens, a cue that actually brought everyone away from TVs to huddle together in the cement shelter at the center of the cul-de-sacs near the communal swimming pool that was always closed or stinging with too much chlorine. Some old couples dragging coolers and lawn chairs down the steep stairs, most of us leaning, slouching, standing around, impatient and ashamed, waiting for the storm to blow over, the wind to stop, waiting for someone to say, all clear, it's safe, you can go home. So I thought that I would begin with a poem that had a lot of conflicting energies in it, a poem that had a father figure in it, and maybe end with a poem that has some conflicting energies and has a mother figure in it. I just hosted my actual parents over at my house in Spokane, and conversation is difficult these days. We find wide gulfs between us in connection with our politics, in connection with our versions of history and such. It's wonderful to be here and be part of this festival. One of the great joys of traveling around the state is that I get to consistently meet wonderful people dedicated to the arts. Of course, we've got Paul and Connie and Nadine and Jared and others here helping with this festival and helping in Tacoma in general. We've got Joey from Ellensburg. We've got Christopher Luna down in Vancouver, Washington. Judy Kleinberg and Luther Allen up in Bellingham. The Get Lit Festival in Spokane is a wonderful, wonderful literary festival if you've never been able to get over to it. It's a really great time for the arts in our state, and it's great to meet so many people connected with it. These are a couple of poems from my last book, The Tangled Line, that came out in 2009. And that book followed a long time working on book one, and then book one gets finished, and you're like, oh God, what's next? I'm kind of a move the comma around guy, and so I fiddle and don't work on new things, and then suddenly there's this big vacuum. I do respond well to exercises and prompts, though, and so I give myself these little tasks, and so I gave myself the template describe something to something else to work within, and these poems came out of that template. There were lots of poems that didn't quite reach fruition with that template. Describe pornography to St. Thomas Aquinas, to name one of them. This is describe wildflowers to ethics. The ground gives a push. Rocks applaud, and nearby waterfalls like rivers of joyful tears. That time laughing so hard at my son, toddling around the house with an erection on which he'd hung the friendship bracelet from the Bible people that said, "What would Jesus do?" Answer that one, and you might be able to see those purples, reds, and yellows, the subtle lavender gloss, sheeny pinks, even the over-the-top oranges, and not be tempted to pick the explosive petals to press into a notebook with the desperate hope you could one day open the pages and say, "As it was, so it shall be." Try again. Write scribbles of smoke against the sky. Philium, trillium, birdfoot, violet, blue flag. Try paintbrush, buttercup. Try please. Try fire and tears. Try greeny, green, green. This second one is describe book blurbs to nationalism. I thought that I was on to some keen insight when I looked around and book blurbs had reached an amazing hyperbole. I think that the longest one was the Jory Graham wrote one on the back of one of Mark Levine's books that essentially said we were witnessing the birth of a new god, so to speak. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but I thought kind of yoking that to the energy in the air in our country made some sense. So this poem may be dated, maybe not. It's described book blurbs to nationalism. You are necessary. You are the new you. You combine art and electricity, ham and rye. You are the sharp mustard between meat and cheese. You cling like burdock, flow like river. You are to your like we to wet. You house builder, you state builder, you democracy builder extreme. You hang sheetrock with neat seams. You paint the scenery so it seems real. You plumb, you deep, deep, deep. You wire the stars, you roof the sky. You intelligent, brave, brilliant, honest. You risk-taker extreme. Oh, risky, risky you. You move, you muse, you dazzle, you brilliant, brilliant, brilliant you. You genius, you incarnation. You epiphany, Virgin Mary in moldy bread. You Walt Whitman mixed with Martin Luther King. You Dickinson, Shakespeare, Dante's lost brother. You Rome, you Byzantium. You radio, you chat room, you needed. You flag, you necessary. Oh, say can you. So that was fun. This is a sonnet, and it has for its title a quotation from Fairfield Porter. Never one to paint space, I paint air. Another jumper broken by the ground under the river bridge. Before the fall, did he consider water, choose to land on hard rock, intestines spread in bright coils of purple, red, and pink, or just fuck up and miss the chance for survival splash of the deep back eddy, where buoyant washed up stuff like plastic bottles and traffic cones mosh for days. In the late 80s, Robbie Brown told us he'd rather die than rot inside out of leukemia. We passed around a pipe, nodded, nervously laughed. Chemo. He lived. Kirk said, "Carpe fucking diem," I'd jump. And sure enough, outed by his mom, he did. And then a couple quieter poems. This is Meadow. Walk slowly, lie down and wait for a quiet, black like the inside of a rock, one of those round stones a glacier left among tiny flowers that you come upon just off the trail and say to yourself, how did this get here? Marvel for a moment as you learn to live in a field without a fence, gawking at blossoms. And then I thought I might finish with a love poem. This is called Loam. It's a blatant ripoff from a friend who had the idea. He's forgiven me. He was getting ready to officiate our wedding, and he said, someone needs to write a parody poem of that Corinthians passage. And I said, okay, I will. Loam. Love is peasant, love is find. It lends me, it is unlike toast, it is prow, it is ride, not self-seating, it is easy language, it keeps sandy loam close. Love does not spite, but rejoices chartreuse, celebrates brindle, cheers wildflower bloom. Love always process, always trout, always whistle and flute, always, always very dear. Three remain, grain, hap, and love. And the greatest of these, my brothers and sisters, is love. Always peasant, always prow, always sandy loam, and always, always near. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd. That was great. Our next reader, we're just going to move right along here. Gary Copeland Lilley is originally from Sandy Cross, North Carolina, and is now living, writing, and teaching in the Northwest. He has twice received the D.C. Commission on the Arts Fellowship for Poetry and earned his MFA in Poetry from Warren Wilson College. His publications include 4 collections, The Subsequent Blues, Alpha Zulu, High Water Everywhere, and The Bushman's Medicine Show. He currently lives in Port Orchard. Ladies and gentlemen, Gary Lilley.
It feels good to walk without that cane, you know, I can stand up here and stuff, you know. I humbled around for a long while with it and stuff, you know. Can you guys hear me? Is that okay? Okay. Prayer to St. James Bird of Jasper, Texas. Sometimes the sufferer wails them church blues. She gonna smell gin on my breath, the street in my clothes. Her good book off the dresser with the word stronger than the oak, stronger than the dogwood of the cross. I have worn misdemeanor green and clean right-of-ways for the state for $1.50 a day. Where is God? I've run boots into the ground. St. James, you kissed your sister at the door and walked the road. I'm on my hands and knees in the dry heaved dawn, wishing one clear eye to see the way. St. James, take us late night husbands, brothers, and lost sons safely home. Lord, rebuke the rollers on their long ride. And of course, you know what happened to James Bird in Texas. It actually was the first time that someone had been tried for lynching and convicted in this country. And that's, you know, even though they have pictures of everything happening, they used to have postcards for, there's an art show called Without Sanctuary. They had postcards. They used to mail pictures of lynchings to celebrate. This is how we do it down here and stuff, you know. But down here could be Michigan, you know what I'm saying? You know, so significant case, significant death, insignificant justice. I'm going to read a few more here. I'm going to, standing on the corner when being cool went blind. Yeah, baby, I'm the Bushman. Everybody know me, a talking drum. I am the oral tradition. The griot of the cigarette, no bullshit. Ain't nothing but the truth. Everything I tell you is airtight and waterproof. I can hoodoo in close view this neighborhood's future from the vantage of my stoop. Get down like I'm proud. I like mudcloth, so let that be my sanctified robe. Priest asked me what my religion was, and I told him I channeled John Coltrane and became a devout musician. I've always been a child of God. If you don't believe me, just ask my blessed, beloved mom. But tell me, why do God's children have to experience every test? And exactly how much of a blessing comes with a financial offering? Well, consider the fact that all our damn deeds need to be sermonized. And somewhere deep in that sin darkness, there's always a crack of light. It ain't for sale, but nothing in this world is half price. And if what you end up with does not satisfy, nobody's giving you that money back. Can you see me in that light with the children of God, those blues people with the haints riding them hard? Please do tell all the other infidels that I believe the choruses falling out of the mouths of the raggedy people that I'm around are the actual utterances of saints. This one is, I told you. Her voice was an earwig in my head. Over and over, a constant cerebral crawl. I told you, you cannot trust Jake. Who I lent the $100 that I could be taking her out to dinner with. And we're sitting here with me waiting for Jake to call. And I trust Jake, but I know it's a shame when you can't trust the people you should be able to trust. Like when somebody dies, isn't there always someone in the family overcome with greed? And you don't see it until the strike has been made, because who knew that crows can weep like the rest of us? Who knew a crow could cry crocodile tears? Isn't there always someone who has stashed all the jewelry, taken the credit cards, and all the trees off the land of the dead person? Isn't there always someone who leaves us barren so they could wear a garment made of scraps of scripture and bits of cash? Isn't there always someone slick and can't be trusted? But I trust Jake, because I know he delivers like he's the last living bluesman. But I told him, please be on time. And we all have friends like that. I do a lot of prayers, so here's another one. Got two more. I got this one, and then I'll close with another. The prayer that's in my blood. Let me see the sun slip over the world in the morning. I need to see God turn up the light. I stood on the back porch at night, smoked a cigar under the holes that once held stars. Baraka. My 5-word prayer, Lord, have mercy on me. I need to find the old tree with a hollow at the base and maybe some roots exposed to place my offering. Lucero, the healer, the wind, the rain, the storm, are all in his beggar man hands. He is a crossroad to my ancestors, the uncles I never met, George and Buddy, grandsons of Jedediah, avengers of my mother. They are buried in Perquimans County off Low Ground Road. How do family deal with murder when we have murdered? Lord, have mercy on me. What would make Lumbee Jim attack my 16-year-old mother before she became my mother? What would make him come to the house and kick in the door? The eclipse is Lucero arriving, the messenger of God. The Muerto has come with him and now walks with me. There are things my mother never talked about. I find my answers in the cemetery. I need to see the sun at the edge of the world. Centrella, my guide, leads me down the line of family graves. I am steeped in the manner in which most of my people worship, gave praise to the God who delivered them from slavers to live at the edge of the great dismal swamp. Lucero, Cantelia, Muerto, and me. Knee-boning in the wilderness, a string of purple beads at the tombstone of my folks. Lord, have mercy on me. I am born of drunken crime. Lucero is the lifeblood of justice, integrity, the keeper of moral law. Government law does not always do what is right. I hold down the anger, keep the Muerto in check. Lucero makes things right. I need to see that red glow come over the horizon. And, thank you. Where's that thing? Shucks. I lost the page. Wait. Go to the table of contents. Here it is. It's a love poem, too. So, why did I lose that one? Oh, love poem. We both drink sometimes. More than we need, and dance into our glasses, not caring so much to the what, to the when, to the who, and why, except that now you have made room for me. You have made room in your heart and bed for me, sliding it from against the wall, both loosening and capturing me with the open space. And we get up different in our mornings. Mine, a soft-strummed guitar, the approaching light, the porch, and remembering how we curled into the body of each other and laid close to the embers of that fire, that hard love, that whiskey does not change. And these same mornings have seen you stretch corner to corner across the heated bed until near noon, and usually under the covers, except that one morning you asked me to never talk about again when you were naked and exposed and beautiful in the light and so utterly comfortable under the open window, a breeze of northwest cool coming through, and you blessed by your warrior witch spirit from the bottle of the night before. Remember, love? Remember how we drank like that? Thank you.
Sharon Thesen grew up in small towns across Western Canada, and for many years she taught English and creative writing at Capilano College in North Vancouver. Since 2003, she has lived in the central Okanagan and is Emeritus Professor of Creative Writing at UBC's Okanagan campus. She is the editor of 2 editions of the New Long Poem Anthology and was an editor of the Capilano Review and co-editor of Lake, a journal of arts and environment. She has also co-edited with Ralph Maud 2 editions of the correspondence between Charles Olson and Francis Bolderoff. Her recent poetry books include A Pair of Scissors, The Good Bacteria, Oyama Pink Shale, and the forthcoming The Receiver from New Star in Vancouver. Sharon Thesen, everybody.
Thank you. And thank you so much for inviting me, for their great hospitality, Paul and Bhakti and Dale and everyone. Can you hear me okay? I'm not accustomed to. Okay? That's good. Thank you. I'm going to start with a poem that is, I suppose, to use the word set, around the time that Richard Brautigan would have been publishing Trout Fishing in America, sort of late 60s, in Burnaby, BC. This poem's called Hey, I Think That's Me. Let's say it was 1971. The Edge of Night was on TV. It was a Thursday afternoon in February. I remember the living room and the cars going by out the window. The kitchen was tidy, if not exactly spanking clean. I'd probably read a Lou Welch poem and hung out diapers. The wall phone would ring twice any minute. A shotgun stood in the corner of the back room. Raccoons, the FBI, snakes, intruders. You never knew. Quietly, the days went by like this, in the house with the baby, poetry, washing my hair and ironing a blouse to wear to the dentist. The Novocaine hit my veins. I thought I'd pass out, maybe die. Why were we living like this? The stupid shotgun, pretense of what? The moose meat roast when the Minskys came over for dinner? Let's just say it wasn't all my idea, nor was I particularly enjoying myself. An allegiance to a certain way of being seemed necessary, to be tough-minded with wire eyeglasses, enraged and sad, but also handsome and articulate. We went to the door with glee, knowing someone American and good-looking was there, with books and hashish and news about the concerts and the riots. We always, there's a certain way in Canada, and this has been written about in many different ways, certain even within the area of poetics, about Canadians being, first of all, colonized by Britain and then feeling colonized by the USA. And certainly by the late 60s, we were much happier to be connected with the ideals and the energy of Americans, trying to throw off that sort of British kind of repressiveness or something that I still feel. I feel the difference between Canada and the United States in terms of speech, in terms of articulation, in terms of saying things. Anyway, I'm going to read a poem about the 2003 firestorm that destroyed a lot of houses and land in Kelowna, BC, where I was living at the time. We'd just more or less moved there, and a fire started in about mid-August. And so this is a poem called "The Fire," in solidarity with the people in California who are now being terrorized by this horrific visitation. One of the things that had happened around the time this fire started was that Mars was apparently larger and more prominent in the sky than it ever had been for a long time. Mars glared in the firmament among the shooting stars and the orange moons. Mornings cloaked in terracotta, in smoke, yellow pears pendant in orchards, a fallen roasted aspen leaf, Etruscan artifact among the tongs and tines of supper time. Airplanes lumber upward, unfold white silk sheets of lake upon the woods, while the armed forces unpack gear and smooth cots in tidy tents in city parks. Gloom, the breathing element, deposits a half-consumed Time magazine on a parked car at the mall, and scorched pages from a first aid manual, a victim choking, a victim grasping at straws, the weather forecast, the percentage chance of rain. This means houses must be burning, though the fire makes its own weather anyway, ferocious windstorms. Her hair, she demonstrated later, flew straight out in one direction, then suddenly equally straight out in the other direction as she stood in the yard, and a walloping sound, otherwise eerie quiet. They left on bicycles, fearing traffic panic. But everyone did go orderly, if terrified, and if two followed fanatic the other's taillights all the way to Starbucks, speaking white-faced into cell phones in the parking lot. I want the house clean for the fire. To the greater scourging, I offer the lesser. Windex, floor mop, sink stopper polished with vim, the whole 9 yards, the whole ball of wax. Last week, we twirled Mars to clarity inside binoculars, discussed its proximity, its palpable redness, the likelihood of life. What? Some weird-looking worm or germ. And this morning, the vacuum cleaner is traveling along behind. I apologize to a pillow. I can't take you, dear, like throwing a maiden off a cliff. Well, not quite, but the sense of propitiation was there. Fire, here is a clean floor. Fire, here is an innocent cushion. A half moon wears out the night sky, buttonhole of a jeans jacket worried to thinness, while Mars lounges among his rights. His stogie, a burning pine forest, held out at arm's length in order to hear better the appeals of the widows. My arms feel unattached, and threading even the largest needle, I tremble and miss the eye. The fallen off button on a folded towel near the iron in the quietness of another house itself, now hazed with smoke. In the haste to pack, the button had twirled and flipped. Darkness was about to fall. I bought flashlights and a round case of needles as if it were an ordinary errand. Helicopters above the roof sound like something being ground. On my lap, the legs and arms of the garment needing a button. Go ahead, fire. Dot with embers the patios of citizens trying to dine al fresco. Aim flamethrowers at the Forest Service, the Army, the Navy for that matter, who also came to help. The exhausted and the holdouts, make them give up. Fall ravenous upon a canyon, reveal its smoking naked contours, imbue with your stink the fur of the cat, extinguish dwelling places. Just go ahead, you and your nasty little freaky friend, the wind. Special effects ordered up by Mars, who sits by the pool with maidens either side, buffing his nails in bikinis. We'll do the roof lines aglow, he tells a sycophant with an iPod. We'll do the totally vaporized. We shouldn't be living here anyway. At night, coyotes howl with laughter and desire. Mars is more human. His attributes ours, his accoutrement also. Pool, chariot, barbecue, wrath. And now, once more, the wind is blowing, and the fire surges upon the town and the countryside. The dear historic, what was lovely, the firs and the pines, the brown rabbit hopping, the canyon road to the railway trestles, where we took our brother and our mother on a Sunday or a Wednesday, with its tall ears standing up. I would comfort if I could, but would have to wrestle it down and feel its scared heart pounding. A stubble of blackened shards where magpies fly, try to settle in autumn light. Pine sap looks blue against bark's carbonic crust, and a spray of brown needles. On the forest floor we pretend are a carpet of grasses and not a scorch of tears. Upon the miles of roots that smolder, still in molten maze, where a bluish haze appears to mark the transit of ghosts and giants who left an arsonist's hoard heaped, extinct matchsticks leaning tip to tip. Thank you. I'm going to read a couple of poems from The Receiver, my most recent book. And it's a book that's kind of coalesces around a number of themes, including the theme, if you can call it that, of contagion. My mother had tuberculosis. Her stepfather had tuberculosis. They lived among people who were ill. She was in a sanitarium in the hot part of BC in the interior. And her stepfather underwent a cure, a treatment called the gold cure. This was back in the 30s in Switzerland, where Davos is. I think it's Switzerland, yeah. Where Thomas Mann had set the Magic Mountain. That particular sanitarium was called Berghof Schatzalp. He went there, had the gold cure, returned, cured, but then suffered a relapse and died. But I'll just read the gold cure. Limpid, decadent warmth in Davos in the summertime, where consumptives once lightly fried on the verandas of the Berghof Schatzalp. The magic mountain of Thomas Mann's imagination, and lived in dreams and numerologies, where time was not time but a thing. And to be there was to be a character in an opera or a ballet in which a patient might take the role of the faun in Afternoon of a Faun. A patient who'd only come to visit someone. He forgets who now, but here he is himself instead. Such is the swiftness and efficiency of contagion. In this trapped condition on the mountaintop, where patients must fall in love eventually with each other or the doctor, as we do in prisons, warehouses, spaceships, schools, convents, labs, offices, outposts, boats, due to proximity and a quasi-domestic dailiness, and which must be forbidden or managed, or not managed at all, through the boredom of the rest cure, or the throes of the toxic side effects of the gold cure, because gold's atoms are tightly linked, and it is difficult to force them past each other. And I'll read one more. Thanks. I'll read one more about, there's a number of poems in here that I'm talking to my mother. This one's called Talking to My Mother on the Phone. We go over a few things, her weather. We go over a few things, the weather, her cough and energy, how long it has been since she's been out of the house. She doesn't sound terrible, and I have a couple of questions about when she was in Tranquille Sanatorium and shared a room with others. I was wondering if her friend from Masset was her roommate, if you can call it that jaunty a thing. But it wasn't her. She's still alive, Mum said. It was another girl, very beautiful, who was a Christian Scientist and refused the treatments. Then what was she doing in the hospital, I asked. My mother said she had TB, and what happened to her was that she died. What a tragedy, we agreed. But then it was her belief, and she died in her belief, so who knows? Maybe she is better off, since she could very well have died anyway with the treatments, or in spite of the treatments, and against her religion. I hope so, said my mother. It was so sad because she was so beautiful, so young. The doctors and nurses, her friends, and even my mother must have tried to convince her. Her family and the minister at her other ear, with their encompassing energy and certainty about what disease was and how she could be helped, encompassing of nature, mind, God, imagination, spirit, hope, faith, love. Who knows? My mother and I said. Maybe she was cured, even though she died. And thank you. I'm just going to finish with this one poem. Anna Akhmatova, whom I'm sure most of you have heard of, the Russian poet. I cannot tell if the day is ending, or the world, or if the secret of secrets is inside me again. That's her. Anna Akhmatova, with a black shawl and a great nose that said, I am a living poet. Joseph Brodsky knew her, and the mystics and philosophers, psychiatrists and economists around then. But for a long time before that, companions had died from gulag or suicide, herself with typhus, TB. In a long lineup trying to see through the crowded gate and into the political prison where her son, or another one loved, was being held, with food for him anxious in the pocket of her coat. A sad, exhausted woman standing there also asked her, can you describe this? And Akhmatova said, yes, I can. And the woman smiled. For years, her poems were recited secretly among friends, or she would write one out on a scrap of paper quickly, let her visitor read it, and then burn it. Hands, matches, an ashtray, a ritual beautiful and bitter.
C.A. Conrad's childhood included selling cut flowers along the highway for his mother and helping her shoplift. He is the author of 8 books of poetry and essays. The latest, Ecodeviance, Somatics for the Future, Wilderness, is the winner of the 2015 Believer Magazine Book Award. He is a Pew Fellow and has also received fellowships from Lannan Foundation, MacDowell Colony, Headland Center for the Arts, Banff, and across. C.A. Conrad, everybody.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm very happy. This is great. And thank you to everybody who put this together. I'm going to be reading from my new book, While Standing in Line for Death. And, but just before that, I'm going to tell you that I write through rituals. I create rituals, and then I harvest those notes from those rituals when I do them, and then shape the poems. What's that? Oh, okay. So I originally started doing the rituals for reasons because I grew up in a factory town. I don't really want to get into all of that. I'll be talking about that tomorrow if you come to the workshop. We're combining our workshops, Ianthe. But I was convinced, so I've been doing these rituals since 2005, and I was convinced that I could find a ritual to cure my depression. I had a boyfriend named Earth who was brutally tortured, raped, and then drenched in gasoline and burned alive. And as though that's not bad enough, hello. Don't be sorry, I love to do this to people when they come in. It's one of my favorite. I hope there's more. Why not? Fuck with people when they come in. Where was I at? I don't know. Oh, sorry, yeah, derailed. I don't know. It's hard for me to pick back up now. So, anyway, I wanted to create a ritual. I actually did 3 rituals. The first 2 didn't work. And, I know what I was going to say. So to make things worse, the police wrote his death up as a suicide because, of course, the police hate faggots, and it just doesn't matter to them. The police either know who did it or they don't care, which is worse, I don't know. And the sheriff, this is in Tennessee where he was killed, and the sheriff would refer to me as faggot when he would talk to me. And when that wasn't enough, he sent the police to my home in Philadelphia to physically assault me, and it's a long story. But I became very depressed, as you can imagine. And so I finally found the ritual. After the second one failed, I realized that I just wasn't going dark enough. You have to be willing to do the worst thing. I feel like we're living in a culture right now where everybody's always wanting to pad this. There's no risk involved with what we want to do, right? We need to take some more risks in order to actually get some healing done. And I figured it out. It worked. He gave me a crystal the last time I saw him. And it was a clear quartz crystal. And what we know from quartz crystal technology, like piezoelectricity, crystals used in science for computers, clocks, we know that they have a consistent current that's not like anything else on the planet. But we also know that they can contain information. They're libraries. So this crystal had been on him for about 1.5 years. And so it was a library of this man who I loved. So what I do is I put the crystal under my hair wrap, and then I would eat a smaller round crystal every morning to be the worker crystal. It would go through my body and would pull the information out of his crystal and embed it into my blood and bones and organs. And in less than a week, everything that had been going wrong in my life changed. This pernicious film that was in my head where I was, there was a courtroom drama that I'd created, that faded away, and I started taking better care of myself. There are 27 poems in this resulting from this ritual. And 9 of those poems came from putting his crystal under my bed at night, and I would have these violent, awful dreams where I was murdering his killers. And so some of those will appear, and I'm going to read just 9 of these poems. A spider's web is made of digested fly brains, wings, hairs, legs, tears, pheromones, attracting more flies, dissolving us into the endeavor of love. Hold me to your song, it is delicious. Hear you one more time in middle of night, tooth it open. Love on, love parts without pause. Dear ghost, flickering with flames that no longer hurt. Deflated lungs expanding. You say they can only burn a faggot once. When you died the way you died, it was contaminating. A new danger of being lost and insecure. But reality can never be avoided forever. At the same moment, who is afraid of whom? The killers or my beloved? Or guilt of my continued song? Desire is not what we achieve. It's a knife often carving the wrong way, or racking it in the alchemy of a mood. I should never trade youth for poetry as a resonance of aging, but I can put every poem I ever wrote in a pile and burn them if you would appear on the other side. Your rapists were the last to taste you in this world. Their breath and terror down your neck keeps me up at night. But which page of the Bible says to burn the faggot after you force him to give you your pleasure? Each time I drink water dropped from clouds, water they burned out of your body, I cup my hands to catch you. In the revenge dream, I behead one of them, spell your name on my face with his blood. The other is begging as I choke him, his neck as soft as your neck. I pull him off his knees, check for tattoos. Is it him? Is it you? I miss you. I love you. My need to attack your killers, this is where I failed you. I should give them a trophy, a faggot-killing trophy. They won. Jesus-loving faggot killers always win. How strong was my failure to keep you alive? I am sorry coming out the golden head of dandelions smashing through cement. Universe expanding at cruel speed. Sorry hogs room in the stomach. A horizon we lit into our eyes. Can only finish this poem with those eyes smashed through cement, lonely and sick with glory of the bloom. Envelop crystal, swallow crystal, thrust crystal up my ass to distract from 10,000 worries. Few things tire me more than imagining reincarnation. A child struggling all over again to not favor war, not surrender to greed. The spirit of your flowers is my favorite shelter. We were in love is the main thing. Faintest green light and tree pulls me forward. Whenever life is beautiful makes me think of you. Carry color of the forest to be with you, to belong to this world with you, to have what we have, and that is it. Yes, the present is between the past and future, but it's too radical to be called the middle. Poetry or another shovel working where the real America buried you. The kind of men shown a table with blueprints of our city to destroy us. When they punish us, it is exactly how we knew it would feel. Places with the least warmth exchanged with places we miss one another in. Sunlight snorkel of corn silk as the hummingbird drinks your wounds away. Fuck the real America up the ass with the fake one. Let it all be done, you said. Let it all be done, I said. Bless you. There's always two. Don't hold it back. This is exactly the kind of space I want to follow you into, holding your little mute worm on a twig. Make it marble. Make it touch like tough winter. In the next life, we will have longer love, better places with extended embraces. Now we leave the song to return to the front. Leaf closing on closeness of mothers in the next world. Overseeing premium waste of the planet. Reincarnate anywhere but here. Land on a different rim. Dear Earth, it is okay to not roll the stone back uphill. We rent memory storage in the world you left behind. Little wonder in this dell of broken treaties. Daisies bend under our slightest breath. You did not answer after you died. It is when I learned to be lonely everywhere, between dreaming and crying, until it calcified and fell off. So I met Earth in the 80s. We were activists in ACT UP, and thanks. We met a lot of different artists and writers there, and it was an amazing time period. It was the time period when queers were out on the street, and I'd like to see that again. We have, in this country right now, I have to go to Europe to get people to talk about it, because nobody in this country is talking about this. We have between 200 and 300 anti-lesbian, gay, transgender laws issued as bills from these Christian extremists. Not all Christians, just the insane ones. And where was I? Oh. So I wanted to do some political action rituals in the book. I did several of them. So these rituals, I mean, these laws are sticking all over the United States. Texas passed a new law just a few months ago that's crazy. I had a couple of dyke friends in Houston with 3 little children who had to leave. You know, after these laws pass, you have to leave the state. There's a new form of segregation right now, and queer people have absolutely, it becomes illegal to be raising children. The state of Mississippi's passed a law where we're not allowed to adopt children. In Tennessee, there's a new law that I'm really pissed off that nobody else is helping us out on the street with this, by the way. It's usually, before Trump was elected, because this has been going on for a few years, I would be the oldest person on the street. Now that Trump's elected, everybody's like, oh, isn't it terrible? I'm like, yeah, where have you been? It's been terrible. There's a law in Tennessee where my boyfriend was murdered. I was just reading that ritual. There's a new law there that doctors who are born-again Christians don't have to wait on you if you're gay and lesbian. You can drop dead in the parking lot. The state of, that goes on and on. Idaho, Virginia, Indiana, Arizona, laws where shop owners, restaurant owners, hotel owners can throw us out. So when I'm on the road, which is all the time, I have to consider which state I'm in. But I wanted to do a few political action rituals on top of the other things I was doing in this book. So I thought I'd close with this last piece, which is the first of the rituals. I get asked a lot of time by young people what my pronoun choice is, and I think it's really lovely to be asked that. It's kind of new, I think. My generation didn't really do that. And I never knew what to say, so I kind of made up one. I should say power sissy. And sometimes they're like, well, what does that mean? I'm like, you figure it out. It's all right. In this case, I'm going to read the ritual and then the resulting poem. Powers to see intervention number 1, queer bubbles, for Candace Lynn. Quote, I hate the word homophobia. It's not a phobia. You are not scared. You are an asshole. And that quote is from Morgan Freeman. He always tells it like it is. I occupied a busy street corner in Asheville, North Carolina, to bless children with bubbles that will make them queer. Not gay and lesbian, but queer. I just want to clarify, I should have done more writing in this prose part, but when we reclaimed the word queer in the 80s and 90s, it was because we were sick and tired of the racism and misogyny and transphobia in the gay and lesbian community. And that's what I mean when I say that. Bubbles, of course, do not have such powers. Bubbles have only the power to be bubbles. And some parents knew that and thought the whole thing was funny and would say, that's cool. I will love my children no matter what. I took notes for the poem. But most parents were not happy about queer bubbles at all. Ooh, bubbles. Look at the bubbles, sweetheart. Look at the pretty bubbles. I blow bubbles for their little hands and say, these bubbles will assure that your child will grow up to be a healthy, happy, revolutionary queer who will help rid the world of homophobia, misogyny, racism, and other forms of stupidity. Parents pulled away nervously saying, sorry, sorry. One mother abruptly yanked her blonde son's hand. Come on, honey, ice cream, ice cream. The boy cried, reaching for the bubbles as she refused to look in my direction, pulling him from the queering of the bubbles. Most parents, though, just said, sorry, I'm sorry, as they walked away. I took notes for the poem. The fear of queer will not dissolve with sorry. The apology is not acceptable, especially if their children grow up to be queer. Asheville purports to be a liberal, laid-back city, but queer bubbles pulled the veil aside for a closer look. It's really a bunch of lies about Asheville. One man said, Jesus loves you. I said, I don't think so. His face screwed up and he yelled, yes, he does. Jesus loves the queers, isn't that nice? And his angry messenger roams the street to tell us so. We must insist that a redistribution of wealth always include the love. How can we be there for one another? How can we be assured that everyone gets the love? Notes from the ritual became a poem. And the poem is titled, Every Feel Unfurl. I was naked on a mountaintop kissing someone who loved me, people fully clothed 9,000 feet below. As crossed out as this cage, I say, I belong to no more. The stars let me off the hook again. This is so new, I don't get it. Hear my voice sing with a voice I do not recognize. The best voice to happen to me, I want it back each night. There is nothing little about little lights in the sky. Now the pronunciation is perfect for another morning of lips to perform their duty to verb. Shrouding ourselves by light of damage control stations of rhetoric. Lips as piglet prepared to be hacked apart beneath the greenery of mansions. A mess the ambulance cannot reach. There is nothing little about the cicada revving up while we think our car horns are so impressive.
Hello. Ianthe Brautigan is the author of You Can't Catch Death, St. Martin's Press. She currently writes for the PBS television series Joanne Weir, Plates and Places. Her work has appeared in Confrontation, the Antioch Review, Simple Feast, and many other publications. She currently lives in Northern California. Ianthe Brautigan.
evening. Your fire poem, it's, I feel like I've stepped outside. Can you hear me? Is this good? All right. I feel like, I'm not good at this, although I feel like a rock star. I feel like I should take the microphone and go, no, I can't do that. But if I could, I would. I feel like I've kind of stepped through a door, and the door is really lovely because what I left was pretty apocalyptic stuff is going down in Santa Rosa and Northern California. And what I've been thinking about is that this is what life is like on this planet, which is that you're safe, you think you're safe, and you're not safe, and then you're safe, but somebody else is not safe, and somebody else is in a shelter, and somebody else doesn't have a home, and somebody else is afraid, and someone else is hurt. And I'm hoping for our counties that we can kind of transform, maybe a tiny bit, to the idea that everybody deserves to feel safe, as relatively safe as one can feel. So that's kind of what I've been thinking about. The other thing that I think is really lovely is this has just been a marvelous experience. The poetry, meeting everyone has just been lovely. I've been so inspired. I felt like I was a dry stick on the verge of combustion, and I feel like I came up here, and you can hear. I mean, this is from the smoke. It's pretty bad there, but I feel like I've been breathing this air, and not only is it the cool, damp, kind of smelly sometimes air of Tacoma, I'm also smelling my familial air. I'm smelling the air that my father breathed when he was in this town as a little boy. I'm walking the streets that he walked. And then tomorrow I'm going to go to his house, one of his houses, which is going to be fascinating to see what that's like. And I was saying earlier today, and in fact, I was talking about, well, anyway, I have a parting gift for whoever wants it, because I arrived here with a can of cat food in my purse because we had to evacuate with the cats, and it was hysterical. We had like 3 sets of cats because there were different people all evacuated into this one house, so you had like caution cat tape. So it'd be like, cats, don't open the door. So it's because you don't want all the cats to get out. So I have a can of cat food because when there's a fire, you got to have cat food in your purse. And I was cracking up at your thing. My response before leaving was to iron 2 shirts because I thought I had time. I had some time. And also what I took was really interesting. I took some of my dad's books. I took Michael McClure's books. I have some beautiful editions of his work, and so I took some of his stuff. It's just a very modest little box. I took Bruce Connor's, I have a print of Bruce Connor, and I took that, and that was kind of, and a new coat, which I'm very in love with. And that was kind of it. So I was once sitting around with my husband's elderly in-law. They're all dead now. But this one, we were sitting, you know how you do after Sunday dinner with people in their 80s. And one of his aunts said, I always wonder about parting gifts. And I was like, what parting gifts? And she goes, on the game shows when they say, and parting gifts. So anybody who wants that can of cat food can have it. That's my parting gift. So, So I wanted to read this poem because, well, first I'm going to read one about funerals. This is my dad. When I was, it's my insect funeral part 9. And actually, this insect burying thing, he went and stole a bunch of Cracker Jacks from the store in a wagon during the Great Depression and opened all the prizes and buried them. And he told me that they had to eat Cracker Jacks for a while because it was the Depression and he was super poor. Anyway, because his mother had to buy the Cracker Jacks. Okay, so my insect funeral part 9. When I was a child, I had a graveyard where I buried insects and dead birds under a rose tree. I would bury the insects in tinfoil and matchboxes. I would bury the birds in pieces of red cloth. It was all very sad, and I would cry as I scooped the dirt into their small graves with a spoon. Baudelaire would come and join in my insect funerals, saying little prayers the size of dead birds. San Francisco, February 1958. So that was right after he left, literally after he left the insane asylum. And I love this poem, and I wish I could read it like he reads it, but it's just funny. So, it's raining in love. I don't know what it is, but I distrust myself when I start to like a girl a lot. It makes me nervous. I don't say the right things, or perhaps I start to examine, evaluate, compute. What am I saying? If I say, do you think it's gonna rain? And she says, I don't know. I start thinking, does she really like me? In other words, I get a little creepy. A friend of mine once said, it's 20 times better to be friends with someone than it is to be in love with them. And I think he's right. And besides it's raining somewhere, programming flowers and keeping snails happy, that's all taken care of. But if a girl likes me a lot and starts getting real nervous and suddenly starts asking me funny questions and looks sad if I give the wrong answers, and she says things like, do you think it's gonna rain? And I say, it beats me. And she says, oh, and looks a little sad at the clear blue California sky. I think, thank God it's you, baby, this time instead of me. So I wrote this memoir about my dad, and it seems so long ago. It's like a whole other world. It's written in kind of a snapshot format, and I'm just going to read just a couple little things. So I think memory, we always assume that memory has a narrative, and memory does not have a narrative. Memory pops up in the oddest of places, as we've heard from the panelists earlier today talking about memory and listening to your poetry of where memory and dreams, there are a lot of dreams in this book. But anyway, this is just a short little thing that I wrote. Beyond words, and this, in the memoir, I put some of my dad's writing. So this is from World War I, Los Angeles airplane. In Revenge of the Lawn is the first part, and then the second part is mine. I tried to think of the best way to tell her that her father was dead with the least amount of pain, but you cannot camouflage death with words. Always at the end of the words, someone is dead. Sometimes the love I have for my father overtakes my whole being, and I want to leap into the air and grab onto whatever color is there to express how my heart feels. At times like those, I envision myself as sort of a sky acrobat, swinging from handhold to handhold in the blue atmosphere. This love is not weak and doesn't fail and remains forever mine. Okay, so my dad and I joked around a lot, and I made up the name of an old folks' home I was going to send him to, and it was called Happy Acres. Happy Acres was the name of an old folks I was going to send my father to when he got old and misbehaved. "No, no, don't send me to Happy Acres," he would say in his quavery old man imitation. "Daddy, it's for your own good." "I'll be good, I promise, I promise. You'll have lots of new friends." "No," he would screech and hobble out of the room. And I'm debating whether to read you something sad or just a description of his typewriter. So I think I'm going to read you a description of his typewriter. So, the IBM. It's quite a machine. His IBM Selectric sat on a big, dark oak table at the Gary Street apartment, covered with a plastic-fitted cover. Sharpened pencils lay on their hexagonal sides, neatly lined up alongside little piles of correcting tape and stacks of whatever he was writing. He never had to tell me not to touch that paper. Those white sheets were more important than anything I could think of and meant a great deal to my father. "Can I type?" I asked when I was 6. "Not now," was the usual answer, but this time he carefully sat me down at the desk and put 2 pieces of paper in the typewriter, turning his head to stare at me with an instructive look in his eye. "You can wreck the platen if you don't put 2 pieces in." Impatient. "No, no, 1 key at a time. Don't bang. Careful, there." I was left alone. The room grew silent except for the hum of the typewriter. For a long time it loomed over me and even scared me a little. My feet didn't touch the floor, so I sort of floated until I reached forward to press a key, always shocked at the sound of the key hitting the paper. I typed my name and a few words and then sat still, not quite knowing what to do with the blank piece of typing paper. I knew that this typewriter was the door to a different world that my father inhabited from time to time. I'd look around at the high ceiling, bookshelves overflowing, torn blue bedspread covering the tall, dirty window, shutting out the outside, sitting under a large overhead light, trying to find a clue to enter this mysterious place where my father went. What I found strange was that he acted like this was a perfectly ordinary room. Well, I knew otherwise. I'd watched him carefully for a long time. Sure, he would give away the secret the room held, but he never did. Occasionally, I'd push open the door to his little closet, which held his few clothes, to see if it went somewhere else. There was just an ordinary wall. So this large, tan, humming machine was the gateway. I was convinced if I could figure out the secret of the machine, I could go there. Again and again throughout the years, I sat at the typewriter looking at the keys for a clue. A small black binder given to me by my tutor, Helen Seacap, solved the mystery. She was a kind woman hired by my father when I was 11 years old to teach me to spell. And this is a funny thing. So we have a dyslexic thing in our family. We can't fucking spell. And it's inherited. So it wasn't until he died and I looked at his rough drafts and I was like, oh my God. One of the first things he gave me was a dictionary. And my daughter can't spell and my husband can't spell. So it's our lives are kind of like, how is it? Like, so if a terrorist burst in the room right now and said, "Spell piece of pie," I would be like, oh, shoot me. So she was to teach me to spell. It was a task I failed, although I did begin to write in the binder I was supposed to copy my spelling words in. With the aid of a real fountain pen that was supposed to help me have better handwriting, I first heard my voice on the page. Shocked and delighted, I continued to write, happy to be alive. I now understood the secret. It wasn't the machine. The world existed in my father. Most people were all on the outside, while he existed mostly in his imagination. Instead of going to an office and working, he went for long walks inside of himself, using his body as a map. His books became comforting to me. Even if at 11 I didn't understand all the stories in them, someday I would. I could never make the IBM look the same when I tried to put it away. My 6-year-old fingers weren't unable to place the cover on the typewriter without having it look awkward. Going to find my father, I said, "I'm done." "Did you turn it off and put the cover on?" "Yes." "Let me see." "Very nice. Good work." He gave me my own typewriter when I was 9 years old. It was a black Royal Portable. My typewriter now holds a place of honor besides my computer. My daughter has her eye on it. Occasionally, I let her type on it, and the carrying case is just the right size to keep trolls in. She'll be 9 in September, and I will pass it on to her. I wonder if she'll feel the same combination of wonder and frustration that was the catalyst for me to keep searching for the place my father knew so well. Now his tan IBM Selectric sits under its cover in the attic, nowhere near a plug, because I know the temptation might be too great for him. So it's Trout Fishing in America's 50th anniversary, and read it. It's really fun to read again. And if anybody has a Brautigan poem that they've memorized or they have in their back pocket, I would love to hear you read it. No Brautigan back pocket poems. Okay, this is the first poem that I learned that I memorized. The only first and only poem I ever memorized, and I don't know what possessed me. I was about 7 or 8. I guess I was like, 7 or 8. It's so nice to wake up in the morning and not have to tell someone you love them when you don't love them anymore.
Thanks, Ianthe. Thanks. Another round of applause for all of our readers, please. Woo!